Will you be the one to witness the birth of the incredible Nintendo Entertainment System? The first to play with Rob, the extraordinary video robot. Batteries not included. He follows the commands you put on the screen, so you get to the dynamite before it explodes. Will you be the one to raise the incredibly accurate zapper and play games like Duck Hunt? Will you be the one to experience the Nintendo Entertainment System? Comes with Rob, zapper, control deck, 2 controllers, gyromite, and Duck Hunt.
Over 130 years ago, Nintendo was a small, rickety-looking shop in the heart of Kyoto. The shop's founder, Fusajiro Yamauchi, tossed out the idea of selling conventional Japanese products like sake, silk, and tea. Instead, he held on to the idea that selling a controversial product that was just legalized would be more lucrative: playing cards. Later, his great-grandson would follow in his footsteps by breaking into the video game industry amid the North American crash. Many told his team they missed the opportunity and didn't know what they were doing. In the 16th century, traders brought Western-style playing cards to Japan. The cards quickly became a popular pastime among locals and were often used to gamble. They were later banned when Japan closed its borders to the world. Many who got into the business of making them stopped immediately. Meanwhile, others looked for ways to get around the ban. They ended up creating new playing cards with disguised designs. One of them was called Hanafuda. While Western cards had 4 suits and 12 numbers, Hanafuda consisted of 4 seasons and 12 months. Eventually, the government caught on and banned them as well. But it was too late. Hanafuda was so popular that many continued to play in secret. It wasn't until the 19th century that things changed. After a more open-minded government took over, the ban was finally lifted. Afterwards, Hanafuda was no longer seen as exciting as when it was illegal. Still, a 26-year-old artist named Fusajiro Yamauchi saw an opportunity. He believed that they could become popular again since they were used for different games. He was so convinced that he gambled on the idea by selling his own hand-painted cards in Kyoto. He called this new venture Nintendo Koppai, which means leave luck to heaven. Many considered it risky since most businesses sold conventional products like sake, silk, and tea. But Fusajiro proved them wrong as his cards quickly became in demand, particularly by the Yakuza who used fresh decks for high-stakes games. Eventually, Fusajiro had to train apprentices to keep up with the demand. And within a decade, his gamble paid off. Nintendo Koppai became the biggest playing card manufacturer in Japan. When Fusajiro retired, he handed the business over to his daughter's husband, Sekiryo Kaneda. Sekiryo proved to be a worthy successor after creating a distribution system and sales force throughout Japan. But as the business grew, the Yamauchi family fell apart, proving that there are some things money can't buy. In the 1920s, Tei and Sekiryo's eldest daughter Kimi married a man named Shikanojo Inaba. Shikanojo came from a respected family of craftsmen and was next in line to take over Nintendo Koppai. But when his first child Hiroshi turned 5, he abandoned the company and his family. Unable to cope as a single mother, Kimi handed Hiroshi to her parents. He rarely saw his mother and never saw his father again. Tei and Sekiryo raised Hiroshi with the same iron fist that ruled the family business. They sent him to a preparatory school and expected him to study law or engineering. But when World War II began, all plans were put on hold. Since Hiroshi was too young to fight, he worked in a military factory until the war ended. Afterwards, he fulfilled his grandparents' wishes and left Kyoto to study law at Waseda University. He also agreed to an arranged marriage with a woman named Michiko Inaba. A few years later, Hiroshi received an unexpected call and was asked to rush home immediately. His grandfather Sekiryo had a sudden stroke, and one of his final wishes was to see Hiroshi. Propped up on pillows on his bed, he asked Hiroshi to drop out of university and take over the family business. Hiroshi reluctantly agreed. It would be a lie if I said I was enthusiastic about taking over. I was young, and I had mixed feelings. But in front of me, I had a family business with no head and all of its employees waiting to know what was going to happen. At just 21 years old, Hiroshi became Nintendo Koppai's new president overnight. None of the employees welcomed him and resented his youth and inexperience. They turned out to be among the many who underestimated his ability to turn the family business into Japan's richest company. A few years into Hiroshi's reign, he set out to transform Nintendo Koppai. One of his early moves was manufacturing plastic-coated cards to compete with the modern US imports. Until then, all cards made in Japan were uncoated, making Nintendo Koppai the first to change the standard. Hiroshi's next big move was securing a licensing agreement with Walt Disney. The agreement allowed them to feature Disney characters on their cards and market to young people and families. It also led to creating a new distribution system that would get their cards into larger department and toy stores. While the launch was successful, Hiroshi struggled to expand and compete against the modern US imports. It made him realize that there was little room for growth in the market and that it was time to venture into new businesses. So Hiroshi dropped Koppai from the company name and took it public to finance its expansion. Afterwards, he launched an instant rice product, started a taxi company, and opened a love hotel. While these ventures brought in some revenue, Nintendo lost a fortune and sunk into debt. Hiroshi ceased operations and started to think of a new business venture, one that could leverage its access to department and toy stores. Meanwhile, Nintendo Koppai's mainstay business, Hanafuda, continued as usual. By then, operations had moved from a single shop to factories and offices around Kyoto. To many, it was still considered small and even unideal to work at them when compared to the companies in Tokyo. But to an electrical engineer graduate, it was their only chance for a future, so much that they put their degree aside and accepted a job as a janitor. Had they not, Nintendo would have never gone on to launch some of the world's greatest video game consoles. After Nintendo sunk into debt, Hiroshi hired top university graduates to help him innovate. One exception was an electrical engineer graduate named Gunpei Yokoi. While he was a known tinkerer and once profiled by a magazine, he struggled to complete his degree. And after finally graduating, he was rejected by every company that he applied to. Working for Nintendo as a janitor and later maintenance worker was his last resort. In Gunpei's first months at Nintendo, there was so little to do that he started tinkering with its equipment. One day, he cut crisscrossing pieces of wood and put them together. Afterwards, he stuck a gripping tool on the end to grab objects from a distance. As he was playing with his invention, Hiroshi walked by and called him into his office. Gunpei was sure that he was going to be scolded. But to his surprise, Hiroshi asked him to turn his invention to Nintendo's first game. Gunpei simply added a group of colored balls that could be grabbed and called it the Ultra Hand. The game was a commercial success. Nintendo sold over 1 million units. Over the next decade, Gunpei developed more games, including the Love Tester and Beam Gun series. The beam guns were so successful that it led to launching the world's first laser clay range. While it became a popular pastime, the world's first oil shortage stomped on its chances for success. Orders from abroad were cancelled and bills went unpaid, leaving Nintendo on the brink of collapsing. This is the end of part 1 of Nintendo's story. In the next part, the company risks everything to succeed in a new industry, video games. By the time they launch in the US, the market crashes. companies like Atari go bankrupt and dump truckloads of discarded games in landfills.